Which is a good idea.
Huh? Can you all hear me? Oh, wonderful. We're live now. Hello, everyone. I'm Ed Chow from Sovereign Ventures, and I'm here with my colleague Gary Lewis, who will be coming up here in a second. Let me just say we are absolutely thrilled that you're all here. Hi, everyone on the live stream. I think we've had over 400 people sign up for this event. This has been several months in the making, and we are absolutely thrilled. The Radix team, Piers, the CEO, flew out from Europe, and the rest of the team flew out. Some flew out from India, and others from the rest of the United States. So we've really excited that everyone has been able to come together. Let me just say that we do have a Sovereign swag bag. Unfortunately, the T-shirts and the water bottles and stickers and so forth weren't able to make it on time. But we're going to email everyone out who signed up for the event, and if you provide us with your snail mail address, then we can push that out to you. We don't want to shortchange you here at the event. Very quickly, the agenda for today, very quickly, is after we do our intros, Radix is going to come up. They're going to do a keynote speech for about an hour, and then we're going to break for lunch. We have wonderful sandwiches for you. We have 5 different types. You can help yourself at the lunch break. A little bit of mingling, and then at 2:30, we are going to start the developer session. I'm sure all of you are very excited for that, and that'll last 2+ hours, around 3 hours or so. Radix's CTO, Russ Harvey, is going to take care of that for you. Let me just say, so Gary and I, we started Sovereign Ventures because we are investors and accelerators in the space, and we're going to be doing these regular meetups in person, both here and in San Francisco. And we're doing this because obviously we see a lot of misconceptions. We want to dispel some of these fears out there about cryptocurrency and DeFi. We all know that it's here, it's coming, it's going to grow, it's going to be bigger, and it's going to take everyone to make this happen. Not just developers, but your mothers, your fathers, your 8-year-old nieces and nephews. Everyone needs to be involved. I was just at the NFT NYC conference last week, and some guy was saying, we're the decentralizers, here to combat the centralizers. Well, we don't necessarily see it like that. I think both traditional finance and decentralized finance is going to come together in harmony. We're so excited for all of you guys to be here. Let me just say, is there anyone in the audience who knows nothing about crypto at all? You're first time, you're just here to listen, you have no understanding of it. Is that right? We have one person. How many people consider themselves crypto experts? Big crypto enthusiasts. Okay. How many people are staking on a network right now? How many people have bought Bitcoin? How many people bought Bitcoin in 2019? 2015? That guy, he's buying dinner for us tonight. Let me introduce my colleague Gary Lewis, who's going to introduce Radix. Thanks very much. It's going to be an exciting day.
Who's the guy that's buying dinner? I just want to find it. Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Lewis. I'm not going to go over what Ed just said about why Sovereign exists, but we are really excited to have everybody here today. I know we have people that flew from Europe just to attend this event. We have people that flew from across the country. We've been really excited about hosting Radix for our inaugural event for a few months now. A little backstory about how we got in touch with Radix. Years ago, when I was kind of doing my own due diligence, I came across Radix's promotional kind of tag on bitcointalk.org. So I don't know who's familiar with that forum, but that's obviously where Bitcoin launched, and a lot of nerds like me were hanging out there, looking for ways to, just looking for projects that were trying to solve the problems of Gen 1, Gen 2 protocols out there. And in looking at Dan Hughes' work and looking what Radix was talking about at the time, a lot of it theoretical, but to me, it just spoke to me. And I really decided that this is a team and this is a network that I really want to pay attention to for the next few years. So last year, when they finally launched the token, I definitely made it a point to tell me and some personal investor friends in the room that we kind of had to go all in on Radix and do our best to try to generate community around the token. And so this is one way of us helping generate community And getting in touch with developers obviously is the first component of community. And so our hope here is that we can get a lot of great feedback from the developers that will have a lot of broad awareness about the token itself. Not that I'm checking the price, but I know it's about 0.4363 right now, and we've had a great week. So all of us that are holders, we're pretty happy about that, obviously, and we think it's only the beginning. So for me and for Ed, it's our great pleasure to welcome Piers Ridyard, the CEO of Radix, and we hope you enjoy today. Thanks so much.
Alrighty, so we are now in a very cold New York, which is awesome. So today I'm going to be doing a little introduction to Radix. We have some pretty special things to be showing you for the rest of the day, but I am not a developer, so I'm going to be telling you guys stories instead of showing you code. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's arrived here and come in person, and also a massive thank you to everyone watching online, which is awesome as well. So Radix is a public decentralized ledger entirely focused on bringing DeFi into the mainstream. And we believe that the DeFi industry will eventually eat the $400 trillion global financial system. So we like to say Radix is layer 1 DeFi done right, not because we've already built everything that is necessary for that to occur, but because we are continually focusing on building the right solutions for the right problems. So what are the right problems? As everyone who has built products before, to build something right, you have to first talk to your customers. So 18 months ago, we started talking with DeFi developers and teams that are creating some of the most exciting DeFi projects today and in the DeFi space. From that, we learned the number one thing that is holding back decentralized finance, and to our surprise, it's not actually scalability. Everyone knows that scalability is a problem and Ethereum is really expensive and the gas fees suck, but it's actually not the biggest thing that every single DeFi project that we went to and said, what's stopping you doing better? That wasn't scalability. But before I talk about that, let me tell you a short story about the birth and rise of the game industry. So we have to roll back to the 1990s. The computer game industry was just getting started. And every game was quirky and different in its own way, and creativity was matched together with incredible acts of developer prowess, some of which we still look at today with awe, and they came from the minds of people like John Cormack, who created Doom, and he is probably one of the most prolific developers who has ever lived. He is an incredible man if you ever look back at any of the stuff he does now, working at Oculus. Back then, game developers weren't just building games. They were building things like physics simulations. They were building 2 and 3D graphics. They were building low-level optimizations for hardware that the games would be running on. And building games was actually a Herculean effort of making a digital environment understand the rules of physics, making the rules of physics work on a puny computer that was trying to render digital escapism for the first true gamers of the world. Now, building a game was actually the work of technology masters at that point. 90% of the time wasn't actually spent on the game itself, but it was actually spent establishing the technology platform on which the game world would be built. And every single one of these games, that whole thing was essentially handcrafted right from the bottom all the way to the top. What does it mean to be a wall or a door? What is the concept of gravity? How does water work? Some of the early breakthroughs in water mechanics in games were literally built by people with PhDs in physics. And it's so extremely difficult because we live in a physical world. As humans, we intuitively understand how the world is supposed to work, and we kind of expect games to do that automatically, but computers don't intuitively understand the rules of physics, and the physics engines often break and end up with rather unfortunate consequences. The game changer for the game industry came when the first game engines really started to explode into the game development scene. The first one of those was the Unreal Engine, 1998, created to make the game Unreal, but is now a staple of some of the most important and incredible modern games. And then Unity in 2005, beloved by indie game makers and large studios alike. This was the start of the growth of the game industry in a way that made everything that came before it kind of look like a hobby. And why? Because the game engine gave game developers high-quality implementations of the rules of physics and game displays and hardware optimizations. It stripped away 90% of the deep technical work that was needed to make a game run, that was needed to make a game feel real. And then game builders could concentrate on the things that make games great. The story, the visuals, the gameplay, how you no longer needed a PhD in physics to make a water level work. Critically, the game engine does not prevent you from changing the laws of physics. If you want to do a game in zero gravity or you want to do it in space, no problem. If you want to be able to walk through walls like you can in Portal and have some interesting, funky dynamics to your physics engine, but it took away the complexity without reducing the flexibility of building an immersive game. The game engine lowered the barrier to entry to make games in the first place. The advent of powerful developer-friendly game engines suddenly changed the industry, and about 1,000 times more people were able to enter, including people like level designers and sound engineers and artists that could meaningfully contribute. And their efforts required to build great games dropped significantly. The result was an explosion in the number of high-quality games. Lone developers and teams could suddenly build indie hits. Large teams of developers could rapidly build many games. Not only this, the scope of games increased humongously. Suddenly it was possible to build an entire world of massive complexity that players could roam around at their leisure. Now, AAA games will simulate worlds and universes because large teams can focus on the parts they care about and what makes a game great, which is immersion and fun. This meant that for gamers, there was more choice, more innovation, and for developers, there was more opportunity. Between 1998 and today, the games industry went from 30 billion to 173 billion, and it's projected to get to over 300 billion in the next 4 years. And that's an industry that's bigger than TV and music and film combined. Before the game engine, very few developers could meaningfully participate in building games. Post the game engine, people on their own could build something fantastic, including people who weren't John Cormack, who obviously built everything on his own. Could build, and these people now build these breathtaking, cool, immersive, fun games from their college dorms. Game engines didn't just create a new tool, it created a better framework for building, and with it, billions of dollars of new opportunity. What happened in the game industry in the 1990s is actually what is kind of happening in DeFi today. Today, DeFi developers spend over 90% of their time on securing DeFi, rather than actually building functionality. Every breakthrough in DeFi is as incredible as it is surprisingly incremental. A little extra complexity here, a little more functionality there. But given the amount of opportunity that exists in the DeFi space, the rate of new functionality being added into DeFi applications is actually surprisingly slow. And that's because of the possibility of hacks and exploits. This is rect.news, if no one's seen it before. This is just a list of all of the most recent hacks that have occurred. And this is kind of the most terrifying thing in DeFi as a developer. For a developer, every single moment is punctuated by the terror that a bug doesn't mean a disappointing game. It means millions of users' funds potentially lost. And in the last 18 months, there have been over $1 billion worth of hacks and exploits in the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem, many of which can be traced back to fundamental difficulty of building secure DeFi. So DeFi today, although it's got over $200 billion under management, it's kind of a proof of concept for what decentralized finance is going to be. It is the game industry before the games engine. But instead of creating games, we are talking about the thing that underpins the entire global economy, which is finance. So this is why I say, this is the $400 trillion opportunity. Finance is a $400 trillion industry, and therefore a $400 trillion opportunity. Let's put that into perspective, though, because sometimes billions, trillions, thousands, millions, at least I find them a little bit difficult to visualize. So This is DeFi now, $200 billion or 0.2 trillion. There's a dot there, you actually can't see it. If we 100x DeFi from now, it would be $200 trillion. And that is the global financial industry, just to give you some sense of scale and proportion. So that's over 2,000 times larger than where we are today. And with the advent of DeFi, this is the biggest technology opportunity since the birth of the internet. The other visualization that we were playing around with was that that's a mile. So you can visualize what a mile is, and then that's the distance across the entire of the United States. That's sort of the difference in size we're talking here. So this is where Radix comes into the picture. We have created something like the game engine, but for decentralized finance. The Radix engine is a finance engine for decentralized finance. With the Radix engine, finance is a fundamental property of the Radix ledger. Things that would previously take developers days, weeks, or months to build and secure in Solidity are now there for free, letting developers focus on what really matters, which is building great DeFi applications and products. Think about that for a second. A game engine for finance. One where the fundamental properties of finance are already defined and are just there, ready to be harnessed with creativity. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the new technology gold rush. Decentralized finance is going to eat the world of finance. And with the Radix engine, we believe that any developer can now be part of that. One more thing. At the start of this presentation, I told you that we had discovered the number one problem holding back decentralized finance. And over the last 18 months, I've spoken with some of the most smartest, ambitious, and visionary people I've ever met in my life, and those are the people building the top DeFi applications today, and they're all held back by this one simple fact. The number one problem in DeFi is that there are not enough developer talent in the industry. There's simply not enough developers skilled enough at building DeFi to satisfy the industry's rapidly growing demand. And why? It isn't because there aren't enough people giving DeFi a go. There aren't enough people giving Solidity a go. There's plenty of people giving Solidity a go, but very few people come out the other side of that. And it's because the time to talent just takes too damn long. It takes most Solidity developers about 18 months of making enough mistakes with Solidity to actually get good at it. And 18 months from start to becoming competent is a really long time. And over that time, many will give up because building DeFi is just too complex and too difficult and too high risk. We call that period time to talent. And it's the root cause of the biggest problem in DeFi today, which is a lack of talent. Which is why we made it our mission to create a programming language that brings down the time of DeFi talent dramatically. So the time to talent dramatically down. We call that language Scrypto. And Scrypto is what today is all about. It's what you guys are going to get a chance to play with for the first time. The world's first preview of what a programming language for DeFi can really look like. Harnessing the power of the Radix engine and putting the power of DeFi directly at the fingertips of developers. So by the end of today, I hope that you will all agree with me that Scrypto plus the Radix engine is not just a paradigm for building DeFi, but a game changer for the entire financial industry. Thank you. So the next person who's going to be speaking is going to be our Chief Product Officer, Matthew Hine, and he's going to be talking about our roadmap for the next few years. Matthew. Let me just check that it's still sharing as well. Sorry, just
okay.
Make sure, yeah, it's still sharing. Cool.
There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Really happy to be talking to you today, both the people in the room and the people that are calling in. Want to talk about Alexandria, obviously. This is the Alexandria preview event, so that's what we're here for. Before I get into the details of that, and certainly before we get to Russell's session about the details of Scrypto and Radix Engine and what the developer experience is like, I wanted to talk a little bit at a higher level, partially because we've got some people in the room here that I know have been following Radix for many years, but we have a lot of people that are joining us essentially for the first time. So we want to talk a little bit about why Radix exists, what we're excited about, like what's the problem we're trying to solve, and why it's so important to put in context why Alexandria is so important. It's a singular moment in the history of Radix that we're really excited about. So the first thing I want to talk about is DeFi. Piers talked about kind of the scope of DeFi a little bit. I want to go into a little bit more about the opportunity of DeFi developers and how DeFi is a financial revolution that's currently on pause. So in order to talk about decentralized finance, I want to talk a little bit about finance in general, to give you a little bit of context for what decentralized finance really means. And we're in the heart of New York right now, so I guarantee there's some finance people in the room right now. I apologize, you're about to hear an engineer talking about finance, so it'll be painful, I'm sure, but let me get through it. So in the beginning of finance, there was money. And money was the first financial technology. It's hard to think of it as a technology, but it really was. It was a piece of technology that allowed actors in an economy to interact with each other in a way that wasn't possible before that technology. But clearly it was limited. What it allows you to do is with cash on hand, you can conduct business that's a little more flexible and a little more powerful than you could do before you had money. But of course that wasn't enough. Very, very quickly, even going back to as far as the Middle Ages, people pretty quickly realized, we really need something more than this. Like I don't always want to have to cart all my goods to the next town over and get a bunch of silver and haul that back home again. There's more was needed from finance. And so pretty quickly, civilization started looking at ways of redefining that relationship between different people in the economy. And so they wanted things like settlement, this idea that I would like to be able to get value that I have right here to someone that's in a distant place in an efficient way without literally having to haul cash on a cart to another city. I want to have lending. I want to be able to do business in a way that isn't limited just by cash I happen to have on hand. I want to increase the scope of my business. You need things like exchange that allows you to interact with actors in different economies than your own, in different currencies, and you need investment, which allows the possibility of common enterprise, larger scale businesses that were possible before, as well as the possibility of individual people putting their capital to work, to investing in different enterprises and essentially allocating a larger amount of capital to productive enterprise. And the way you define this kind of relationship, the only way of really doing it at this time was the rise of banks. So this happened around the Renaissance period. You had these institutions that grew up to meet that need, and this was another technology. The bank was, again, another financial technology that redefined the relationship between this world of economic actors. And it struck a new bargain. Rather than everything being person to person, rather than being I'm doing business with you and we're going to exchange cash for goods or services, this defined a new relationship where now your relationship is primarily between you and this banking institution. And by doing that, and by the bank providing a safe way of trusting your money to that institution, this enabled a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't possible before. All the things I talked about, you could move money over large distances, you could do lending, all these things, and then variations on that thing that arose. You get into derivatives and all sorts of wonderful things that come out at a higher level than that. And this was transformative. This brought a change to it's easy to think of this being backwards, but like the scope of commerce and even the Renaissance was incredible. It was a global economy. It ran a lot slower than it runs today, but it was still very much a global economy. And that essentially is the same system that we continue to have today. This is the same thing. It's been digitized. It's made much more efficient. The variation of financial products and services available have been elaborated, but fundamentally it's the same structure. It's the same bargain between individuals and how they do business with each other. And it works, but we're now in the internet age. And I think everyone's starting to realize that it feels a little bit weird. It feels like there's something wrong with the finance industry, and you see it in different ways. And this is something that's a little bit difficult to grasp because everyone's interaction with the financial system is different. But it's things like if you ever wonder why it is that the user experience on your banking app kind of sucks, or you wonder why it's like I'm trusting my savings to a bank, but I get 0% interest, but the bank is lending it out to the people and they're making money on your capital. Or you wonder why, I'm trying to wire money to my family on the other side of the world and it takes a week and it costs me $50 to do it. Like, why is that the case in the internet age? Or it might just be like, why are things like the 2008 crash even possible? Like where we had this level of opacity in what was going on such that we could have this systemic collapse of the financial system. Why is that possible in the internet age? It doesn't mesh with the expectations we have. And those expectations come from what we're used to experiencing with the internet itself, which is an open network. The idea that we're now used to the idea that I can communicate with any other individual in the world in a way that is incredibly flexible through an open network. And it's done, certainly today, through a huge range of apps and web apps and so forth that meet every possible need that anyone can think of, like the way in which people want to interact with each other on a global scale. And what this means is an open network delivers a platform on which developers can interact and provide solutions for global communication that are competitive, convenient, inclusive, and cheap. We didn't have those things before the internet. If you go back to, I'm just old enough, it's sort of like, remember like the AT&T empire, like everything had to go through these institutions if you wanted to talk to someone in another country. Now we're used to a vastly improved system because it's using an open network. This was the enabling technology that made that possible. And so that is the basis of the vision of DeFi. Decentralized finance is the idea that why can't finance also be done through an open network? It changes the bargain that we've had in place for over 300 years. The idea here is that rather than the relationship being between the individual and an institution, which then acts as a proxy to do all these things on your behalf, the first step of the bargain is that individuals can trust their own funds and their own assets, their own money, to the network itself. It's essentially like, you can connect to the internet directly. Same sort of concept. We need a network where you can directly have your own ownership of your own funds on that open network. And once we strike that bargain, now similar to the internet itself, we open up this possibility of there being thousands of applications that can interact with those funds and those users to build all of the things that we've had in the financial system since the beginning, but in a vastly better way, in a way that is competitive, convenient, inclusive, and cheap. What I mean by this is, competitive, you should have much more free choice in how you get your financial services. This should be something that, why isn't there something that's totally customized to exactly your needs and who you are as a person? Convenient, inclusive, cheap, all these things. And of course, it needs to be just as safe as what we're used to as well. This is an important prerequisite for it. No one's going to move to a system that forces them to compromise on what we're used to that banks actually do quite well. Is they keep our money safe. They provide these things for us. We don't want to go backwards on that. And this is the vision of DeFi, and it's utterly transformative. And this is why Piers talks about the fact that we believe that this is an enormous opportunity in general, and what I would say is particularly for the developers that are on the feed and in the room, this is a colossal opportunity for developers. It is the biggest developer opportunity since the advent of the internet itself, because every one of those applications that are going to recreate everything we have today is going to, you have an inherent competitive advantage in building those things on an open network that you don't have if you're trying to build financial products and services the traditional way. And on top of that, you can build things that were never possible before. I think one of the favorite examples, and this was mentioned by Edward, NFTs are a really interesting thing that's been happening recently. Like, I think everyone's kind of generally aware that NFTs, this idea of ownership of a digital image or something like that. NFTs are absolutely part of DeFi. This isn't sort of a separate thing that's happening in crypto. NFTs are integral to DeFi. They're an excellent example of what you can do when you have an open financial network. Essentially what an NFT is it's true digital ownership of something on an open network. And that's something, the thing that everyone's aware of right now is like the idea of digital art. That's fantastic. You're also going to get digital collectibles, fantastic. But that same technology extends right into the heart of finance itself. If you're thinking about a particular debt position that you have on something like that, that can be encoded as an NFT and you can retain true self-sovereign ownership of that debt position on an open network in a way that was never possible. And that then allows more financial products to be built on top of those financial NFTs in a way that was never possible. So the range of things that you can accomplish with this type of system are enormous. However, as Piers pointed out, global financial, the total value locked right now in the financial industry today is 400 trillion. But right now where we are in DeFi today, which is primarily on the Ethereum network, for those who are familiar, that's really where all the DeFi activity is happening for the most part, is a fraction of that. It's less than 2,000 times smaller than the financial industry today. So This begs the question, if there's all this opportunity, if developers have this unfair advantage to build financial products on an open network, why isn't this bigger? Why are we still on 1 pixel out of this thing, out of this huge opportunity? We're several years now into DeFi now. Why isn't it taking off? And the reason is we need to go back to the things, the vision of DeFi. We need to go back to what DeFi should be providing us in the end, which is, again, it should be a financial system that's competitive, can be inclusive, cheap, and safe. And the issue is that practically today, with the platforms and the technology that are available to build the DeFi today, we can't quite live up to this. We can build applications that are more competitive. Anybody can connect to Ethereum, they can launch a smart contract, they can launch a dApp there, and they can build a financial product of some type. But practically speaking, as Piers mentioned, the difficulty in actually hiring developers to do that is very high, which limits the amount of competition that can actually happen there because there's a limited amount of talent to actually build new things there. The scope of an entrepreneur's vision is limited right now. It's not particularly convenient either because the technology available makes it really difficult to build great user experiences on top of decentralized platforms. It's also not inclusive and cheap because if you're familiar with using Ethereum today, doing something as simple as just swapping between 2 assets on a decentralized exchange can cost $100 for 1 transaction. That's not particularly inclusive because it means only the people at the top of the food chain can afford to do that, and clearly it's not particularly cheap. So there's a tension there with what it should be fulfilling, but it's not. And then of course safety, as you mentioned, the range and scope of hacks and exploits today is mind-boggling. And so you essentially have a group of extreme risk takers that are participating in DeFi today because they're the only ones that are willing to live with the level of safety. It's limiting the scope to that single pixel compared to the opportunity. So this then is why Radix exists. Radix's product vision, the reason that motivates everything that we're building right now is to give builders everything they need to obsolete traditional finance and replace it with thousands of DeFi apps and assets. This is a colossal scope, and I'm going to talk more about sort of the roadmap, how we get here, but this is why we get excited. This is what has been motivating the R&D work and the development work that we've been doing for more than 7 years now, and it's what motivates what we're going to be working on for years to come. Because providing that technology solution for developers, for builders of this potential world of a decentralized form of finance is the only way we get to finance as we've had it for the last 300 years to a system that's built for the next 100, that's truly finance built for the internet age. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. So let's talk about Alexandria. I'm going to pause for a moment. So Alexandria is what we're here to talk about today. And Alexandria is one point on our roadmap, and I want to put this in a little bit of context of what you're going to be seeing this afternoon in the workshop sessions about Scrypto and Radix Engine. These are the very first forms of these things that we're putting in the hands of developers with the Alexandria release. And I want to talk a little bit about that release and in the wider picture of what Radix has been building at this point and where we're going for the next few years. Specifically, I want to talk about that Alexandria is the very start of our roadmap to global scale DeFi for developers. So the work that we've been doing for the last 7 years has been entirely focused on that end goal, on this idea of a platform that's suitable for global scale finance that can really provide everything that people expect from that kind of system. And we've broken that problem into these 2 major categories. There are 2 substantial technology problems that need to be solved to have a platform that actually is suitable for something at that scale. And we have technology solutions for these 2 things that we're going to be rolling out over the next few years, and you're going to see the first peaks of these things today. The first thing the Radix platform needs to provide is that it needs to be built for builders. And this is incredibly important, as you can imagine. Developers are the core of what makes this thing happen. Radix ourselves we're not going to build a better financial system. We're going to build a platform where developers in this audience and on the call and the new developers that we're going to be drawing to Radix in the coming years can build that system on top of what we built. And so the things that we're delivering here are Scrypto and the Radix engine. We've started talking about this, and it's the idea of an asset-oriented form of smart contracts. We'll get into details of what that means, but the outcome of this for the developers is that there should be a development experience that provides security through simplicity. It should be easier to build more secure code, or else you're never going to get to a platform that is going to reach the level of safety that people expect with their money. You need a development experience that's powerful and familiar, but is actually built for finance, not just something that people can repurpose for the use of finance. And it needs to be a system where you can share code and get rewarded for it. We think of this as taking the open source philosophy into the decentralized area of taking the open source even further than it was ever been possible before. Scrypto and Radix Engine is designed around providing those benefits. The other major category of technology problem that we need to solve on Radix is that the Radix platform needs to be built for scale, obviously. And scale is, obviously the scalability thing is from a technology point of view, it's the well-known problem it's people thinking about, and an enormous amount of our development work has gone into creating Cerberus, which is our specialized braided cross-shard consensus mechanism. I'm not even going to try to talk about consensus theory here. I can spend the next 6 hours talking about this, but we have a breakthrough form of consensus that for the first time allows you to have a network that's not simply more scale, but it's not something going from 10 transactions a second to VSys scale of transactions per second. What we need is something that can scale the way the internet itself does. The idea that if there is more demand for people, the network itself needs to automatically scale to meet that demand without limit. We call this linear scalability. The idea that providers of network infrastructure that are self-incentivized, when there's more demand, it adds more operators of the network and builds more infrastructure naturally. Cerberus is designed around building that type of scalability that isn't going to run out of steam in a few years. And what that gives you in the end, for the point of view of the developer and the user, is that you'll have unlimited throughput for decentralized applications, not just simple transactions and tokens, but unlimited throughput for decentralized applications, low fees, forever. Anything short of that is not actually going to be the platform that can serve global finance. Okay, so this is what we've been working for some time, and we've got years of development to actually, we have the fundamental technology approaches that can deliver these things, and over the next several years, we're going to be delivering a sequence of releases of the Radix network that are going to be rolling out pieces of this functionality step by step. But there's an important question here, is that we can't just sort of totally be focused on, okay, we've got this tech, we just get this out here, what's the most efficient way of getting it out there? Anybody that's been in product development for any length of time knows that build it and they will come doesn't actually work. You need to think about how you bring this into the market in a way where every step of the way, particularly for developers, can experience real benefit as they go. Everything we need to release has to provide a benefit at that moment in time and have it lead to what we build thereafter. So the important thing, there's enormous importance in the order in which we do these things and how we roll it out. And this comes to, there's a video that maybe some of you have seen if you're in the Radix community called Ethereum Island that I did. You can look it up on our blog. It's kind of a little picture of like where we're at right now in the DeFi ecosystem today, where Ethereum is this incredibly exciting place where lots of stuff is going on, there's lots of business going on, but essentially it's a climate change disaster waiting to happen. Everyone has reached the edges of what you can possibly do on that island. The ocean levels are starting to rise. Everyone knows they need to leave because it's not going to scale to what they need. They know it's not sufficient for building the kinds of houses that they actually want to build. Even though it's exciting, they want to go somewhere else. But the problem is, and this comes from talking to many, many developers in the ecosystem, people that live on Ethereum Island today, is they say, we'd love to go someplace better. We'd love to go to Radix Island on the horizon there where there's unlimited space and we can build better things. But the problem is that we're not going to go there until we see other people there. They need to see adoption because they're making a business decision. And adoption is, in addition to our technologies, the most important thing that Radix needs to focus on building. We need to build adoption. Adoption is it's a multifaceted concept here. It's not simply the number of tokens that are on your platform. It's not simply users of your wallet. It means, for developers in particular, they want to see that there's a real community of enthusiastic, motivated developers that are working with your tools, not because you've got an incentive program where you're paying developers to use your stuff and talk about how they're going to launch, but they're there because they love it. They're there because you're actually able to solve a problem with those tools. They're working on their nights and weekends and they're telling their friends about it. They need to see that kind of a real adoption because that's what's sustainable for the long term. They also need to see those people producing real code and proving what's actually possible on the platform. No business wants to be the first one to build something. They want to see that similar things can be built with those tools, and they want to see that other developers are doing that. And they want to see all that example code. And then lastly, to Piers' point, they want to see that there's a base of hiring. They want to see that there are lots of developers in that ecosystem they can use to bring into their companies to launch great things. So Radix needs we need to build our technology roadmap in a way that builds this kind of adoption. And this is a really difficult problem. And I think there are two ways of thinking about building adoption. In general, adoption is a matter of you're trying to convince a large number of people to go in one direction. It's a matter of building momentum in a certain direction. And I think there are two ways of going about this characteristically. The first way is by building a flash mob. It's the idea that's saying like, okay, what we really want is we want 100 people in this place and we all want them doing the same dance at the same time at this. And what you do to build a flash mob is you call a bunch of people. You get all your friends, you have a message board, and you say, okay, if we all show up at 3 o'clock in this intersection, maybe we even like hand $5 out to everybody and we can get 100 people that are doing this one thing. And you get a lot of clicks on TikTok and it's awesome. But it vanishes after that. Everyone goes back home and then they wait around like, well, when's the next flash mob? When are they going to organize the next thing? It doesn't create a sustainable movement. There's no such thing as a flash mob that just automatically grows on its own and becomes a movement of 1 million people. This is what we need to do. And unfortunately, this is the approach that we see most people taking in the crypto industry today. We see projects that are raising enormous amounts of money, they're building developers funds, and they're saying, hey, if you're willing to do a press release that says you're going to launch something on our platform, then we're going to pay you for that. The problem with that is you can get that first step. You can get a flash mob. You can say you can build hype around your project and say, look at all these developers that say they're going to launch on our platform, but it's not sustainable. It collapses as soon as the money runs out or as soon as there's something that's more exciting. What we need to do is take the other approach of build a true movement. And movements are built on real solutions and great ideas. This is something where you don't need to call everyone else. There's no way you can call this many people. But what you do is you tell a few people that are really passionate and you tell them, we think we've actually got a better idea, or we think we've actually got a better solution to a problem that you are experiencing right now. And if you can do that, if you actually have a great idea or you actually have a meaningful solution, they'll take that and they'll brace it and they'll tell their friends about it. And their friends will tell their friends. And it becomes an exponential growth. It's not something that you have to put in direct work to get every single person on board. It grows on its own. And so this is the approach that we're taking with our technology roadmap and how we're rolling it out in a way that enables the creation of a movement. And so what this means is starting with providing the tools that we need to build that kind of community. And fortunately, we've already started on this. We have the Olympia release. So those who have been following Radix knows that in July of this year, we launched the Olympia mainnet. This was the first launch of the network. It's a fully decentralized network. It's functioning today. It's been operating fantastically since then. You can do transactions on it. It carries the Radix token. And that is the foundation of our community. It provides an uncharted form of Cerberus, so it's proving out kind of the earliest technology pieces. It's not the fully sharded form, but the fundamental consensus approach we take in is present there. And it has an early version 1 version of Radix Engine that's allowing us to prove out that this asset-oriented approach can actually function on a truly decentralized network. And the wonderful thing from our point of view is that there is a fantastic and amazing community that's grown around this network, even in just the last few months. We have an unbelievably committed set of token holders that are believers, that are on our social channels, that I'm sure most of them are watching right now on Zoom. And we also have a fantastic community of node runners, the people that actually provide the decentralized network infrastructure. What a decentralized network means is that Radix isn't running the network. We don't have any control. We don't have secret levers that we can tell the network what to do. Literally, an open community that anybody can join has created that network and is running the Radix protocol already today. And I love seeing that those node runners are not just there because, to make money, but honestly, they are trying to build community. There's some really great work that those node runners have been doing in building tools for their community, building dashboards and ways of seeing what's going on in Radix. They're going to be some of our earliest developers. They're enthusiastic about where Radix is going, and in many cases, they're running nodes just because they want to participate in that movement. It's amazing. So, after Olympia, our next step is Alexandria, and obviously that's why we're here today. The focus of Alexandria is around community developers. It's around not going directly out to, okay, we're going to try to convince businesses to launch on this platform. This is actually, Piers has talked about this before, that this is actually a mistake that Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, believes he made, is taking his smart contract approach directly to the public network without a period of gathering developer feedback, without engaging with the developer community before putting that on the decentralized network where it becomes very difficult to change. This is something that we're going to be doing very explicitly, as Alexandria starts as a way of developers immediately starting with building dApps using Scrypto and Radix Engine, but not directly on the public network. It's going to be the best possible environment for you to make rapid progress on experimenting, seeing what the language can do, and providing feedback to us, guiding our own roadmap so that over the next year or so, we are absolutely confident that the form that Scrypto takes and Radix takes is actually going to be the right tool that these people can be passionate about building the next generation of finance with. And so success to us means that Alexandria will create thriving developer community channels. It'll create community-led Scrypto events. It's going to create lots of Scrypto code examples and feedback for us as we develop, and it's also going to create community-built core DeFi ecosystem apps. And what I mean by that is the elemental pieces of what DeFi makes work. Exchange, lending, a few of these pieces that make up the minimum form of a functional financial system. All of those things will be able to be built with Scrypto starting today with the preview form of this that we're going to show you. And we expect that over the coming months of Alexandria, those applications are only going to be elaborated further, they're only going to get better, and the features of the platform itself are going to be improved so that when we move on to the next release, Babylon, we're ready to launch a true DeFi ecosystem. And the focus of Babylon is on DeFi entrepreneurs. This is where Scrypto and Radix Engine move on to the decentralized network. We put it all together. We start with the community that we've already built of token holders, of node runners, and of developers already engaged, and we immediately launch DeFi applications on that platform, on the decentralized network, that came from this community, that weren't applications that we funded the development on, even though we're clearly going to support our developers. Don't worry, we have a developer fund. But this is going to be something that comes from the community. It's not going to be top down. And the features that we're going to deliver there are on-ledger Scrypto, on-ledger Radix Engine v2, and also on-ledger Blueprint Catalog. Blueprint Catalog is a really interesting concept. We've got a blog post about this that's going to be going up, but it's the idea of this is where we get into the open source philosophy in the decentralized world. But I'm going to leave that aside for now. And then the fourth step after Babylon is Xi'an. The focus of Xi'an is actually finally on a true DeFi ecosystem. And this is where we deliver fully sharded Cerberus. And what this means is that now we're ready to scale DeFi to the world. We take the community that we've built at Babylon and we turn this into a large scale movement where the network is ready to scale those applications from now into the foreseeable future. And we're ready for the scale that we think DeFi can truly achieve if you have the right technology. And so, in conclusion, I want to say, particularly to the developers, welcome. Welcome to everyone, but developers are the guys we're going to be talking to this afternoon. Anyone can feel free to stick around, but we're going to be getting laptops out. We're going to be showing you Scrypto code. Today, it's actually the repo is actually open. We have open source Scrypto. Developers are going to be able to download it today. It's a preview form of Scrypto. It's going to continue to improve before the Alexandria release, which is expected about a month from now. But developers, both on the call and here, are going to be able to work with it for the first time today. Russell, our CTO, is going to lead you through its key features and how to make use of it, bring you up to speed as quickly as possible. And we can't wait to see what developers are going to build with this. And we can't wait to hear what your feedback from us. We want to see this community. We want to do everything we can to encourage it. So welcome, and we can't wait to show it to you. So I think we're going to, if you want to.
Yeah, so I'll just announce that we have